Oh, why stop now when farces have been pretty much your gimmick throughout this entire season? Right off the bat, we begin the climax of the series with the Precure being summoned by and meeting with the Star Princesses. Having finally gathered everything on their rather convoluted fetch quest list, they were finally going to bring things to a close, which resulted in Prunzu having a flashback to the Notarier's initial attack. Yeah, we'll get into the death flag implications in just a minute, but first, I'd like to point out that one of the last princesses he talked to during the attack was the Libra. Because let's face it, Libras are always the best, am I right, guys? We also got a little background about how he chose to stay behind to protect the princesses before being tasked to protect Fua, and yeah, the villains may as well just show up at this point if they're going to raise these many flags. The Notariers donned in their new Darkness cosplay armor, launched an attack, and oh, that is just unfortunate. Okay, I think I understand why Capard was so against this plan. Never mind the other two, I feel bad that this guy's dignity is officially down the drain. Design sense aside, the armor was effective at breaking through the prince's defenses. Thus, the Precure went out to provide some offense, and as one of the final epic battles of the series, the animation was unfortunately still very stiff, with the character's movement still running at only a few frames per second. They move about as well as my G1 Predaking, and not that there's anything wrong with that, you are still one of the best Transformers ever, I'm just saying by modern standards. Point is, aside from a few good shots here and there, this week's fight clearly had a lot of cut corners, with the aforementioned stiff animation, lots of needless close-ups, and plenty of reused animation, and I'm not even talking about the stock finishers. They use stuff like this one attack by the villains at least twice. With a week off, you'd think they could put at least a little more effort in than this. Anyway, while the Precure managed to match the generals with their twinkle imaginations, they couldn't hold off their ships. However, just as they started to pierce through their defenses... Okay, that was awesome. Yep, Tappa had arrived with an entire armada to provide backup. This prompted the Notarays to come out and show off their less impressive armors too. Seriously, I understand why to save material, but that full body prototype armor was so cool. Anyway, as the battle progressed, it eventually came down to Tappa's forces and the Notarayers all going in for one last really intense attack, which led to Hikaru trying to pull an Ash Ketchum and stop the fighting.
Stop, don't come back.
No, for whatever reason, after the commercials, this worked, with everyone stopping and all of that huge energy they were building up just disappeared into the ether. Because really, who cares about consequences at this point, am I right? Of course, this led into your standard hero speech where she basically just said everyone needs to get along. Yeah, I'll be honest, I was kinda cheering for Darkness to do something here. And sure enough, that's exactly what he, or rather, she did. Yep, as many had predicted, Darkness's true identity was that of the 13th Star Princess of the often forgotten Zodiac constellation, the Ophiuchus. Personally, I do kind of wish they went with my rogue AI theory, but then I guess they wouldn't be able to rip off the climax to Battle Spirit's Ultimate Zero. Yeah, more on that later. But yeah, even though they were clearly going for an Ophiuchus motif, I do wish they didn't go with something as predictable as her just being the 13th princess. It certainly didn't warrant such an over-the-top reveal like this, though I will admit, that is a good design. Also, I swear I've heard that voice somewhere before. Hold on, let me see, Mie Sonozaki, who sounds like a certain Higurashi character. Anyway, let's see, she played Aya from Comic Party, Nana Shimura from Hero Aka, and... Well, that explains a lot. Anyway, she fully dropped the good boss facade and just used the Notarays as batteries for one big attack to wipe out the Armada. She then proceeded to reveal her true motivations. Having worked with the other princesses to create the universe, she viewed their creation as a failed project, as it had been filled with too much imagination, which, you know, is kind of inevitable if life is allowed to develop, lady. Thus, she resolved to just destroy it all. She had even begun the process, which, yeah, as I predicted, this led to the big darts reveal. I'll give this lady credit, as cliched as she is, that is impressively evil. This alone confirms that thanks to her black holes, the Ophiuchus princess has a body count at least in the billions, if not trillions, or even more. And outside of a very extreme Deus Ex Machina, those victims aren't coming back, all because this lady didn't like how her art project turned out. There's a certain name for people like this.
Sociopath.
Granted, I do think they could have done her backstory a little better, but I'll get into that later. Anyway, using her mind control generals and their repeated frames, Sister Abigail made her way through the last defenses. The generals almost took out the Precure until a certain Cyclops finally decided to join in. Okay, now that's a cliche that's way too played out. I-1 managed to hold off her former teammates, allowing the Precure to take on the final boss on their own, which, yeah, obviously, them and their stock animation was no match for a goddess that could create miniaturized black holes. To make matters worse, I-1 couldn't hold off the generals, as the princess even pointed out there was no defeating her mindless servants. However, Hikaru said that they weren't going to defeat them, they were going to protect them. Well, okay, so are they going to do something different, like comfort them or calm them down, or just use their same old cold chant that they've used countless times to defeat them, and heck, they even managed to purify likely hundreds of Noto rays flowing above them? I really need to buy one of those buttons for these reviews. However, there was still the little matter of the Galactic Gorgon. She blew the Precure away and took her fellow princesses and Fua with her. The two most competent members of this team, Prunsu and Lala's AI, managed to save the Precure while I-1 helped the generals. Thus, the episode ended with Hikaru declaring that they would save Fua as usual, never mind the Star Princesses. For all of my snark, I will admit, this was an exciting first part of the climax of this series, with the Ophiuchus Princess coming off as actually an intimidating final boss, and I will admit, just the layout of this stuff alone was pretty damn epic. But at the same time, I just wish I hadn't seen this story before, and that the animation was a lot better. I'll get this out of the way since it is a bit more personal, but I am getting tired of the Ophiuchus being a major villain, be it in Saint Seiya, Fairy Tail, or as I mentioned, Battle Spirit's Ultimate Zero, a card game anime, where the final boss used a deck based on the 13th Zodiac in order to bring an end to the universe, forcing the heroes and villains to work together to fly into the center of the universe in order to stop him. Sound familiar? Though, while I won't accuse this show of plagiarism, it does go to show how played out this plot point is, all because it's the 13th Zodiac and a snake. Now, all that said, the evil princess is still a good villain in her own right. I personally would have wrote it so that she wanted to destroy the universe just because it didn't match up with her imagination, thereby making her a bit more of an egotist as opposed to just wanting to destroy it because life dared to exist. But still, her body count is nothing to sneeze at. Thus, she does a good job as acting as a final challenge for the Precure as the series winds down. That said, while the setup and scope of this conflict are impressive, the actual presentation is a different matter altogether. Just on my first viewing, I noticed a lot of reused animation and still frames and found even more upon this review. We're in the home stretch of the show, and this was one of the largest set pieces for this entire franchise, and yet they still managed to fumble hard. Add on to that the Fua Kolchan just solving everything, once again making Hikaru's speech more of a platitude than anything. What should be one of the most epic climaxes of the franchise isn't completely pulling me in right now. Over the little New Year's vacation I got last week, I managed to upload 2 videos, the latter half of my Symphogear GX review, and my early thoughts regarding Healing Good. Do check out both if you can, though especially the Healing Good video, as we all know it's going to become a lot more relevant in just a few more weeks. Currently, I'm working on a review for the Star Twinkle movie because I get the feeling like it's going to play a big part of my final analysis of this series overall. Look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and... Excuse me, I'm just gonna go deal with these crows. You're not taking any home runs today, you little monsters!